Welcome to the Super Gringo podcast, where we discuss pretty much anything from Brazil to the mental illness of the loony left. I'm the Super Gringo, Sean Armstrong. And feel free to leave comments in the live chat, or you can call on Skype. My ID number is in the description. Today we'll be talking about, of course, the war in Israel, the loony left and their role in it. Grooming in our public schools, always a hot topic on this show. Let's get started. Saturdays I trash your party. You hate Trump, Biden shot it. You tell every kid you see that you are gay. Science makes you mad, indictments make you glad. For 8 years now we've got 'em, is all you said. Biology is just too much, so the doctors cut off your nuts, and you think that you are a babe. You call me names and swear at me, because you changed the way you be, and I don't want to live your fantasy. I know I'm right, you're fucking crazy. And tonight I'm gonna prove just how much you ain't too bright. You're kinda lazy. I know you're wrong, I know I'm right, you're fucking nuts. We have a new feature on the Super Gringo podcast. You can now call in using Skype. Simply make sure you have Skype on your phone or your computer. You can find me using the username The Super Gringo, one word, which will come up with Sean Armstrong, or you can use the ID number in the description. Call in, bitch, complain, tell people what you think. Even if you're a loony leftist, just going to show up to call me a big poopy head. It's entertaining. None of us really take you seriously anyway. I guess last week was banned book week. There are no banned books. There are just parents asking in schools for books to be age appropriate. Here are some photos from my Facebook with people holding the quote unquote banned books. Perhaps we should send them a dictionary so they can look up the word banned.
You know you're in a cult if 18. Lost your shit over To Kill a Mockingbird and Huckleberry Finn but are screaming about banning books with gay sex and masturbation in school libraries. Even though the books aren't banned, you can purchase and beat off to them at your leisure.
Some of these sites have turned off comments because they got too many responses of these books aren't banned. There are no banned books. I have never seen so many people arguing so hard to tell kids what they do with their pee-pees. And that takes us into our next section.
Excuse me, it's ma'am. It is ma'am, okay? Ma'am. Once again, ma'am. Once again, it's ma'am.
This guy is fucking stupid.
Now, for 2 days, I've been sharing videos about parents going to school board meetings, reading some of these books out loud, trying to groom kids. And for 2 days, old Tony here has been trying to justify grooming kids. Did you know? Not telling kids what you do with your pee-pee makes you just like Hitler. Again, we're back into the cult behavior. This is Tony. Tony thinks it's cool to groom kids. Fuck Tony. It's all part of the alphabet cult. Fuck Tony. It's all part of the alphabet cult.
You know you're in a cult if 1. You believe you are what your imagination says you are. Delusional, characterized by or holding false beliefs or judgments about external reality that are held despite incontrovertible evidence to the contrary, typically as a symptom of a mental condition. You know you're in a cult if 6. You believe reality isn't real. Delusional, characterized by or holding false beliefs or judgments about external reality that are held despite incontrovertible evidence to the contrary, typically as a symptom of a mental condition. You know you're in a cult if 10. Thanks to Jamie Lee Curtis, who didn't know how many Oscars she'd won, them can't count. You know you're in a cult if 11. You will cry in protest to take a real black woman off a syrup bottle and a Quaker off a box of oats named Quaker Oats, only to put a fake white woman on a beer can. All while saying, I can't believe they're so upset over a beer can. Bud Light parent Anheuser-Busch's stock has lost $27 billion over Dylan Mulvaney. You know you're in a cult if 18. Lost your shit over To Kill a Mockingbird and Huckleberry Finn but are screaming about banning books with gay sex and masturbation in school libraries. You know you're in a cult if 21. Being so filled with hate, you will groom, mutilate, and murder your own children, all while calling your opposition fascists. You know you're in a cult if 25. Will refer to a biology book as right-wing propaganda. You know you're in a cult if 26. Will lose your shit if someone actually uses proper English, instead of your made-up pronouns. You know you're in a cult if 32. Are the same people who say you can't indoctrinate kids to be gay with a book or a drag show, but continually accuse the church of doing that very thing. Although religion isn't taught in schools, and you're not forced to go to church. You know you're in a cult if 33. When someone is simply talking science and common sense, you will try to bring religion into it. Well, you know the church. Well then, don't go to church. It's not against the law. Not going to school is. You know you're in a cult if 34. Will use unrelated behavior to justify their sick, grooming behavior. You know you're in a cult if 39. Will lose your shit when someone says you're in a woke cult, and to prove you're not, you do the things on this list over and over and over. You know you're in a cult if 46. Consider chemically castrating a pedophile horrible and inhumane, but chemically castrating a child just dandy. Buck Fidden. Videos, pedo, you're
That's
babbling
Buck
trying to
Fidden.
defend grooming kids, I'm just showing you're mentally ill. Anthony Daniel D'Imperio. Buck Fidden by continuing to try to say that it's possible some gay people are pedos so they all are? Which again you refuse to answer whether you think that logic applies to all groups. Buck Fidden. Videos, pedo, watch the video.
Does he realize it when he says gay
Anthony
kids
Daniel
in
D'Imperio.
schools? Meaning like
Buck Fidden,
6-year-olds?
like I said, unless you're admitting you
admitting
judge
that
only
he's a pedo?
LGBT people like that, then everyone else is probably guiltier based on population numbers of pedos. Anthony Daniel D'Imperio. Buck Fidden quiet is deafening. Buck Fidden. Anthony Daniel D'Imperio after what 20 videos, and you're still trying to justify telling kids about your PP. But you're not a pedophile at all. Anthony Daniel D'Imperio. Buck Fidden, you're the one arguing for telling kids who were born gay what to do, aren't you? That's
Kids
grooming.
aren't born gay.
Anthony
They
Daniel D'Imperio.
figure out what they are later
Buck
in life.
Fidden, well, why do you want more straight people like Hitler? Anthony Daniel D'Imperio. But I guess you're for that? Anthony Daniel D'Imperio. Well. Buck Fidden. Number 34 again. Anthony Daniel D'Imperio. Anyways. Answer my questions. Anthony Daniel D'Imperio. See, you don't have any arguments, so you spam. Anthony Daniel D'Imperio. Called it. Anthony Daniel D'Imperio.
He didn't look down because I was
for not
responding
grooming
to him
kids
with
who
the
are
same
born
thing
gay
over
or
and
trans
over.
to be allowed to be who they are when they grow up. Anthony Daniel D'Imperio. Here it comes again. Anthony Daniel D'Imperio. Your platform is so weak you can't even defend it. Anthony Daniel D'Imperio. You mean comprehensive sex education? You know abstinent
Remember,
sex
he said
education
that.
leads to more STDs and more unplanned pregnancies. Anthony Daniel D'Imperio. Thanks for that. Anthony Daniel D'Imperio. So before I denote recent years, why were straight parents teaching their kids to grow up gay? Anthony Daniel D'Imperio. And again, you're the one trying to tell gay kids what to do, not me. Anthony Daniel D'Imperio. So why you trying to groom them to be more like Hitler? Buck Fidden. Kids aren't gay. 6-year-olds aren't gay, you're just a pedophile. Buck Fidden. Kids aren't gay. 6-year-olds aren't gay, you're just a pedophile. Buck Fidden. Kids aren't gay. 6-year-olds aren't gay, you're just a pedophile. Buck Fidden. Kids aren't gay. 6-year-olds aren't gay, you're just a pedophile. Buck Fidden. Kids aren't gay. 6-year-olds aren't gay, you're just a pedophile. Buck Fidden. Kids aren't gay. 6-year-olds aren't gay, you're just a pedophile. Buck Fidden. Kids aren't gay. 6-year-olds aren't gay, you're just a pedophile. Anthony Daniel D'Imperio. So you knew exactly what you liked growing up? Why are you such a special little liberal Republican that no one else is like you?
He even tried to equate drag show story hour with kids to Santa Claus. Dressing up like a slutty woman with a full beard is, I guess, in his demented mind, like dressing up as Santa Claus.
Dang, an imbecile. Like the dumbest motherfucker that ever lived. Everybody knows you never go full retard. You went full retard, man. Never go full retard.
I made a YouTube playlist just for him. Did you know that teaching biology in schools is grooming kids to be straight? That's right, folks. According to Tony the Penguin Boy, teaching biology is grooming kids to be straight. That's right, folks. According to Tony the Penguin Boy, teaching biology is grooming kids to be straight. Buck Fiden. If you don't let me tell kids what I do with my pee-pee, you're Hitler. Tony Penguin Boy D'Imperio. So when did you choose to be straight and wanting to be the same sexuality as Hitler? You know, because if one person from the group does something, then everyone in that group is the same. Now, he's already admitted he wants to groom kids. You've already heard it. But I answered him with, as soon as I figured out girls didn't have cooties. I guess according to Tony, kids know whether they want to gobble cock or lick the vag at birth. I literally told him 10 times 6-year-olds aren't gay. They have no idea whether they want to gobble cock or lick the vag. Also, comprehensive sex education is in none of the books or any of the classes that you will fucking see in the videos I'm about to show. People are arguing way too hard to tell kids what they do with their pee-pees. By the way, this guy works for the Transit Authority in New York City. Now, this first video is gays against groomers. Even members of their own community think they're sick motherfuckers. They're pedophiles. They want to tell kids about what they do with their peepees. So they're sexualized enough so they can be victimized. All in the name of the loony left ideology. I have a question, and it popped into my head the other day while I was thinking about this shit because it just pisses me off. If chemically castrating and eventually literally castrating kids is for their health and it's supposed to make them happier, why is every one of these loony leftists I've talked to, without fail, on either a mood-enhancing drug or an antidepressant, or both? I thought these surgeries were supposed to make them happy. You shouldn't need the drugs. So even members of the Alphabet Mafia think these people are sick and mentally ill.
Gays Against Groomers is a coalition of gay people who do not stand for the sexualization, medicalization, or indoctrination of children. What adults do with their body is up to them, but leave the kids alone. Good evening. No child is born in the wrong body. I am not oppressed. I am not silenced. I am a gay man. My name is Frank Rodriguez. Today I represent two families of mine within Redlands, as well as my own. I am here today because of two reasons. One is to protect children against the idea that they can in fact change their gender. This is because gender is rooted in your biology. However, gender expression is not. How you choose to express yourself is your own choice. Society should just simply be nice to everyone. However, lying and stating that a man in a dress is a woman is delusional by definition. Not only delusional, but this ideology is dangerous to children. Despite what you may want to believe, children are in fact taking chemicals to alter their bodies. That's not delusional, it's reality. Despite what you may want to believe, children are in fact getting gender-affirming surgeries. That is not delusional, that is reality. These children are starting a journey of judgment.
One of them will be speaking later in this video.
By pushing kids to question their gender, question their sexuality, and question whether or not their parents are on their side. Therefore, the word predator is being used in the context of grooming, not because he or she is gay, but because the idea that gender is fluid, because in reality, it is not. It is a danger to children for the reasons that I stated above. Gays Against Groomers has educated the public on numerous occasions on what we stand for, and I will echo that here today. Gays Against Groomers is a coalition of gay people who do not stand for the sexualization, medicalization, or indoctrination of children. What adults do with their body is up to them, but leave the kids alone. Yes. Yes. The second reason I am here is that this board, especially Jenna, is lacking something that not long ago I was taught by my mentors. That's leadership. Leadership is not what we do, what the job we have, or even the position we are elected to. Leadership is who we are, how we behave, engage and learn, but most importantly, influence. Councilwoman Jenna Lowry, I respect the position that you hold. I do not respect you. For what you have done to your constituents here in Redlands, silencing people that disagree with you. Our constituents are our job description. When you silence them, you are no longer a leader, you are a dictator. I demand that tonight after this meeting, Jenna, you resign from this position.
First off, there are only two genders. Sex and gender are synonyms. Sex is immutable and binary. People with disorders
for the dumb
in sexual
motherfuckers out there,
development or
synonym
intersex
means they're the same
are
thing.
not a shield for your perversion. These are fundamental biological facts. You can call it bigoted or fascist or violent, but it's a universal truth.
Not my fans, you know, but if a loony leftist happens to stumble across
Schools
this.
are not a place for you to practice pseudoscientific ideology. Affluent parents can homeschool, but disadvantaged kids are forcibly sucked into the gender cult in public school. Most parents are none the wiser because the institutions in this community endorse grooming online chat rooms like the Trevor Project, which encourages a lack of parental consent. But what happens in the best case scenario, say the child is supported by her parents. Is transition the right solution? If a transgender child exists, I was one of them. I am a former trans kid. I was born female, but at the age of 12, social media influenced me into believing I was a boy, and I began my social transition by cutting my hair short and wearing clothing from the boys' department.
Kind of got to
When I
throw
came
this
out,
on to the parents,
I was
you
met with
know.
love and support from my family, but my mom and dad weren't sure of what to do, so they confided in a team of medical professionals. My therapists and physicians decided it would be best to immediately affirm my identity and allow me to medically transition rather than letting me be a kid and explore without mutilation and sterilization. My parents and I were never told about the high desistance rate among children who identify as the opposite sex. Just several months after I was diagnosed with dysphoria, I was put on blockers and testosterone. I was 13. My body was mutilated by an ideological cult before my 16th birthday. I looked like any other boy my age, and I genuinely believed myself to be one. I would never have guessed I was wrong until I had surgery and I was faced with reality. I realized that deep down, I was always going to be a woman, and I wanted to be a mother. But the ability to breastfeed my future children was cut off at 15 years old.
Now,
And
if
on
this
top of
girl
that, I've
didn't have
experienced
mental
complications from the blockers, testosterone,
health issues
and surgery
before,
that will go
she
on
sure
to
as hell
affect my
does now.
reproductive and overall health and my sexual function as an adult. My breasts are gone forever, and what is left is unhealed grafts and massive scars. It's only a fraction of what you promote. Redlands, as a community, needs to stop embracing harmful ideology and cult-like mentality that leads to children getting hurt. The $11 million you paid to the 7 middle schoolers sexually assaulted by your teacher could have gone to better your community. Instead, you've enabled this reprehensible behavior by sexualizing your schools. You paid a large monetary price, but I promise that the children have and will continue to pay a much higher price. I know this myself. I know I have. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I had another question. It's a medical question. According to most doctors, pumping your body full of human growth hormones is a bad thing for your body. However, pumping your body with hormones from the opposite sex isn't. Literally, one of these fucking morons told me, "Can you find a scientific study that isn't more than 10 years old?" The one I used was 30 years and still ongoing. While they were sharing junk and bullshit, someone typed, on a blog, it's called long-term data, you fucking morons. For instance, did you know across the world, even in countries where it's not only accepted but celebrated, the suicide rate for post-surgery trans is 35 to 50% higher than the general population? Across the world. That would mean everywhere. That would mean oppressed, not oppressed. Nobody's actually oppressing you people, except maybe in Palestine or Iran. Most of you are murdered by your significant others. Having listened to you, maybe it's the fact you won't shut the fuck up. According to Tony, this next clip is about comprehensive sexual education. It's not about them grooming kids. It's in-depth sexual education.
A video gone viral on TikTok is generating buzz, but for not the reasons you might think. The clip was recorded during a recent CCSD meeting, and now an investigation is underway.
I'm going to read you an assignment given to my 15-year-old daughter at a local high school.
Kendra Evans appears to be rattled as she stands before the Clark
They're not
County
grooming
School
kids.
District
This is all
Board
part
last
of
week. The mother
comprehensive
claiming her
sexual
daughter was
education.
upset about what her high school teacher assigned her to memorize in front of her class and sharing a portion with the board.
I don't love you. It's not you. It's just, I don't like your or any in that case.
CCSD board members quickly stopped the public comment over the derogative language, and the mic is turned off. That moment captured on social media on a popular TikTok page claiming adults can't handle hearing this content, yet they readily give it to kids in school. In the original feed from CCSD, Evans is given her time to speak, saying this about her 15-year-old daughter.
We have pornography laws regarding minors in this state, and many of those were violated because of this assignment.
While we're not allowed to engage back and forth in a dialogue, we would absolutely like to make sure that your concerns are addressed.
CCSD via Twitter says they are investigating the circumstances surrounding the class assignment. Evans stated she didn't want the teacher fired, but hopes by addressing the matter, it will avoid the problem from happening again.
Well, if you would like to see the complete video, we posted a link on our website. That's 8newsnow.com.
Now, this next one, I want old Penguin Boy here. Yes, I called him Penguin Boy. One of his justifications for the homosexual lifestyle is that penguins, I guess, commit homosexual acts on each other. So according to him, because penguins of the same sex fuck each other, he should be allowed to tell kids what he does with his dick. Fuck Tony. I'm still trying to figure out, what does it take to piss off Americans enough to take back their country? They're grooming and sterilizing your children. There should be bodies hanging from telephone poles with a sign around its neck that says, I'm a fucking pedophile and I worked for the school. What the fuck does it take? The founding fathers shot people over a 3% T-tax. Fuck.
Good evening. Many of you know me, so I am here
What's up,
to
Guru?
discuss this atrocity of assignments.
Is that a beer, Mike?
I will first say, you're a liar. It's not a rumor. I have the proof right here in my phone of the with whom would you do it with? And my daughter specifically stated that the teacher put up a wheel on the classboard and it stated anal penetration, oral sex, licking of ear, kissing, and he wanted them to write down the initials of a boy or girl that they would do these activities with. Now, I don't know what's worse, wanting to know my child's sexual advances, or who we're going to have anal penetration, oral sex. What is he gaining from this? What do you gain from this information? Why has my daughter that
Y'all be looking for a new school board if I were that father.
Scared. She wants to get good grades. She wants to be, get her license. She has to get good grades. And so she does this assignment. Where's the assignment? Why hasn't she had it turned back to her with her grade on it? What is he doing with it? Is this for his spank bank? Is he literally using this for his sexual deviant?
I've never heard that before, spank bank, but I will be holding on to it.
He sexually abused every single child in that classroom. You look up the definition.
Cheers.
The paper for the definition of verbal sexual abuse. Now, sexual abuse is sexual abuse. So where's the criminal charges? Why is he still teaching? Is it because he's the football coach and Churchill's doing good? Don't want to lose that hype? Because football doesn't matter when it comes to our children. Okay? This sexual deviant needs to be removed. If you do not remove him, I am giving you my word today that tomorrow morning I will go down to the county clerk's office and I will file for the removal of every single one of you.
Yeah. I want to start with prefacing that I'm obviously not in his health class, which clearly makes my opinions about it irrelevant. I went to our vice principal, I talked to her about my concerns, I tried to be a voice for the student body, and she dismissed it because I'm not in her class.
Bunch of sick motherfuckers.
At FSU, we decided to bring this up in Feminist Student Union last Friday. People have mentioned this is a sexual abuse and a sexual harassment issue. It is a feminist issue. And we brought it up, and what happened?
But they're not grooming kids in your schools.
In the back room,
ask them, they'll tell you.
And they told us that we had to shut it down. We didn't mention his name. We didn't even mention his name. We brought up something on the news. We talk about things that are going on in the news constantly. We brought up what was happening in the news. We talked about a relevant issue at our school, and we were told that we had to shut it down. This is ridiculous. People are not attending his class. People are uncomfortable outside of his health class. It is not just the health class, it is the teacher.
According to Tony, the man right there is like Hitler, right out of his own mouth. I played you the comments. That man right there is Hitler. Fuck Tony. Now, we get into the no shit. What does it take to get you people pissed off enough to hang motherfuckers from a telephone pole if it ain't your kids? Anyway, now we get into the Biden-funded attack on Israel. Yes, folks, Sniffy Joe helped fund that attack by unlocking $6 billion worth of Iranian funding. They were seized because they funded terrorism. By the way, to all you pro-Hamas fuckheads out there, if you support terrorism, you are a fucking terrorist. Then again, look at these scumbags who support these terrorists. The same scumbags who committed terrorism against their own people by burning down their fucking neighborhoods. First, I just want to give some historical background about Israel, Palestine, the Middle East in general. A lot of it is actually in the Bible. It is historically accurate. There are other things in the Bible that are kind of hard to believe, but this is pretty much historically accurate because it is in the Torah, the Quran, and the Christian Bible. Also, archaeological digs prove its fact. So let's get some historical background on this.
Israel, the world's only Jewish state, located east of the Mediterranean Sea, and Palestine, the territory of the Arab population that hails from the Israel-controlled land, have long been known for their enduring conflict with the Israeli occupation of the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. The tension between Israel and Palestine has been deteriorating in years, climaxing with many violent clashes between the two sides. To understand the root of the Israel-Palestine conflict, we have to look back a few thousand years ago. Early history of Israeli-Palestinian conflict. In the 17 centuries BC, following the call of God, three patriarchs of the Jewish people, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, settled in Canaan, a region approximating present-day Israel, the West Bank, and the Gaza Strip.
I don't have an
Lebanon,
engineer to go
Syria,
get me beer.
And Jordan. The region later had the name the Land of Israel, the Promised Land, the Palestine region, or the Holy Land. In 1000 BC, King Saul established the Israelite monarchy, which then was ruled by King David, who made Jerusalem the capital of his kingdom, and his son King Solomon, who built the first temple in Jerusalem. After the death of King Solomon, the united monarchy was split into the Kingdom of Israel in the north, with Samaria as the capital, and the Kingdom of Judah in the south, with Jerusalem as the capital.
See, I didn't even know all this shit, so this is kind of cool for me,
but
too.
then it was subject to numerous conquests of various groups, leading to the significant decrease of the Jewish population on the land. One of these conquests was conducted by the Roman Empire, who gave the name Palestine to Judah, intending to break the Jewish connection with the land of Israel. During this time, Christianity, which started as a Jewish sect, ultimately became a dominant religion toward the end of the Roman Empire.
Thankfully,
in the
I'm
7th
outside
century
the
came
United
an
States
Arab
jurisdiction,
conquest, beginning the spread
so I
of
get
Islam.
to say whatever the
Dome
fuck
of
I
the Rock
want.
was built on the ruin of the Second Temple,
I know a couple
making
Congress people
Jerusalem
that
the
need to
holy
be
city
fucking
to
dead.
three monotheistic religions: Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. After Christians in Jerusalem were intensely persecuted by the Seljuk Turks, a Central Asian empire with ambition to expand its territory, Christians in Europe launched several crusades to bring the holy city back to the hand of the Christians. During this time, many Jews were killed. Others were making pilgrimages everywhere, mostly in Western Europe. From the 16th century to World War I, the Holy Land, along with much of the Middle East, was ruled by the Ottoman Empire, an Islamic superpower. The land was unofficially called Palestine. At the same time in Europe, more and more Jews were joining a movement called Zionism, aiming to create a Jewish national state in its ancient homeland. Hence, in the first decade of the 20th century, tens of thousands of Jews moved from Europe back to the region. Israel and Palestine under the British rule. World War I exploded and ended with the collapse of the Ottoman Empire. Its land in the Middle East was carved by the British and French empires. The British then gave more independence for Iraq and Jordan, and the region remaining under the control of Britain was what it called the British Mandate for Palestine, where Britain promised to establish a Jewish national homeland under its Balfour Declaration, which went into effect in 1923. Tensions between the Jews and the Arabs who both claimed the land grew, which even led to acts of violence. By the 1930s, following the increasing Jewish population in Palestine due to the fear of persecution during the Nazi reign in Germany, the British limited Jewish immigration. In response, the Jewish militias formed to both fight the Arabs and resist the British rule. Then came the Holocaust throughout Nazi Germany, which claimed almost 6 million Jewish lives. After the war, more and more Jews then fled from Europe to Palestine to seek a homeland, escalating the tension with the Arabs. Overwhelmed by the situation, Britain began to withdraw from the region. The birth of the Israel State. After World War II, the UN proposed a plan to partition Palestine into 2 independent states, a Jewish state and an Arab state, with the city of Jerusalem becoming an international zone with a special status. However, the plan according to which the Jewish, accounting for only 1/3 of the population, was granted more territory, 56.5% of the land, was rejected by the Arabs. They began to form volunteer armies throughout Palestine. Less than 1 year after that, as Britain completed its withdrawal from Palestine, Israel declared itself an independent state, marking a new, bloodier chapter in the struggle between the Jews and the Palestinian Arabs. The 1948 Arab-Israeli War. Right after the announcement of an independent Israel, a war between the Arabs and the Jews broke out,
My
which
question
was known
is,
as the 1948
how many times can the Arabs get their asses
War.
kicked before they go,
The war involved
"Shit, we
5
can't
recently
fight"?
independent Arab nations: Egypt, Jordan, Iraq, Syria, and Lebanon, the Arab League, who invaded the region in an attempt to establish a unified Arab Palestine. However, a ceasefire agreement was reached a year later in which more than 2/3 of historic Palestine, including the West Jerusalem, belonged to Israel, while Jordan occupied East Jerusalem and the area known as the West Bank, and Egypt occupied the Gaza Strip. As a result, more than 750,000 Palestinians were expelled from the land where they lived for centuries on the day that they call Al-Nakba, or the catastrophe. With the deteriorated dispute between the Jews and the Arabs,
Actually,
there came
according
more
to
wars
records,
and fighting in the
they
following
left
decades.
voluntarily, or were ordered to by their
The
respective
60-Day War.
leaders, and that's Six-Day War.
It was in 1967 when the 60-Day War broke out after a volatile period of diplomatic friction
if
and
I got my
skirmishes
ass
between
kicked in
Israel
6
and
days,
its neighboring Arab states,
I might think about,
Jordan, Syria, and
leaving
Egypt.
people the fuck alone.
This brief war ended with the victory of Israel, giving Israel control over the Golan Heights from Syria, the West Bank and East Jerusalem from Jordan, and Gaza and the Sinai Peninsula from Egypt.
That's Sinai,
was
but
later
anyway, I
returned
want
to
you to
Egypt
think about it.
under the
3
Egypt-Israel
armies
peace
attacked
treaty.
Israel, and
After
they
the
lost
war,
in 6
most
days.
Palestinian refugees and their descendants were not allowed to
How about
return to their
giving
homes,
it up,
but had to
people?
live in Gaza, the West Bank, and neighboring Jordan, Syria, and Lebanon. The First Intifada and the Oslo Accords. The rising number of Israelis settling in the Palestinian territories in the West Bank and Gaza gave rise to the PLO, the Palestinian Liberation Organization, first founded in Cairo, Egypt in 1964 to create a liberated Palestine in Israel. The PLO launched attacks on Israel from its base in Jordan. It was then forced to move from Jordan to Lebanon, starting to carry out acts of terrorism against Israel. Fighting went on for years, including the Israeli invasion of Lebanon to kick the PLO out of Beirut. The PLO eventually agreed to divide the land between Palestine and Israel, but there were still more and more Jewish settlers moved into the Israel-occupied Palestinian territories. In 1987, a violent Palestinian uprising was ignited, starting from the Jabalia refugee camp after an Israeli Defense Forces truck collided with 2 Palestinian civilian vans, killing 4 of them. This was known as the First Intifada. This bloody conflict, resulting in hundreds of deaths, triggered a peace process with the signing of the Oslo Accords by Israel and the PLO, the Oslo I Accord signed in Washington, D.C., and the Oslo II Accord in Taba, Egypt. According to the Oslo Accords, the West Bank was divided into 3 areas. Area A was exclusively controlled by the Palestinians. Area B was controlled by both the Palestinians and Israel. Area C was fully controlled by Israel. The Second Intifada. Though further peace talks continued in 2000, the Israelis and Palestinians could not reach agreements on issues like the status of Jerusalem, rights of refugees, and the increased Jewish settlement in Palestinian lands. Ariel Sharon, a Jewish Israeli who would later become Israel's prime minister, visited the Temple Mount, home to the Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem. The action was deemed offensive by many Palestinians, and the Second Intifada broke out. The violence ended with Israel's withdrawal from Gaza, but continued to settle in the West Bank. Israel conflict with Hamas. Hamas is a Sunni Islamist militant group aiming to destroy the state of Israel and create an Islamic state. After the armed conflict between Hamas and Fatah, who managed the PLO, Hamas split from the Palestinian Authority and gained power in the Gaza. Israel put Gaza under a suffocating blockade, leading to several bloody wars between the two groups in the Gaza Strip, including Operation Cast Lead, Operation Pillar of Defense, and Operation Protective Edge. In 2014, Hamas and Fatah reached agreement to form a national unity government. In 2018, the U.S. Embassy was relocated from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, which was deemed by the Palestinians as a signal of American support for Jerusalem as Israel's capital. 2021, the conflict between Israel and Palestine was reassumed by a series of hostile events in East Jerusalem, leading to several acts of violence until a ceasefire deal brokered by Egypt, Qatar, and the United Nations came into effect on May 21st. Peaceful though it may seem now, the complex and long-lasting territorial dispute between two states is a ticking time bomb that can explode any time.
It did explode. So Sniffy Joe financed the Hamas attacks on Israel by unlocking $6 billion for Iran, paying for 5 American hostages. Basically, he killed 11 Americans. I guess the number's up to like over 30 now. Well, combined between dead and missing, 30, over 30. So basically, he killed and had kidnapped 30 Americans in Israel to get back 5 Americans from Iran. Talk about voting fucking stupid. Exactly, Pooh. Fucking, if you're going to be stupid, you better be tough. But they aren't. But let me show. This is how it's done.
Aldrago/EPAFE/REX. By Joel Simon. By Joel Simon. January 27th, 2019, 3:05 a.m. Pacific Time. In his first 2 years in office, President Trump has made the recovery of Americans held hostage or unjustly imprisoned overseas a top priority.
Don't worry about it. The loony leftist who wrote this article is going to try to turn it around
UCLA
with
basketball
Trump
players
did
who were
bad
detained
things.
in China, and Caitlin Coleman, who was rescued along with her family after being held captive by the Taliban for 5 years. Trump's approach represents a departure for the United States. Although many European countries routinely pay ransom when their citizens are taken hostage, the U.S. has a no-concessions policy, meaning that it does not negotiate with terrorist groups that take Americans hostage.
Oh, I saw
Washington will
there's
engage with
special
hostile
forces in
governments
Israel
that
now
unjustly
fighting.
jail
So,
Americans,
American
a kind of
special
judicial
forces.
hostage-taking.
So,
President Trump has taken
there's
a
also
strong
American
personal
special
interest
forces
in both
in
kinds
Ukraine,
of cases.
so we're in 2 wars already.
Advertisement. Families of American hostages say they are pleased with the responsiveness of the Trump administration. And the photos of freed hostages arriving at Joint Base Andrews, or smiling in the Oval Office, are certainly political gold for the president. But when governments negotiate for hostages, there is always a strategic cost. So what exactly is Trump giving up in exchange? The president has largely flouted the institutional expertise that informs such decision-making. It is easier to see what Trump is gaining, a stark and largely symbolic contrast with President Obama that, conveniently, can be documented in a photo op. In the wake of 9/11, a surge in hostage-taking posed a challenge to Western governments around the world. One series of incidents proved particularly trying for the Obama administration. In 2013 and 2014, Islamic State took dozens of Westerners hostage in Syria. The European hostages were eventually released after their governments made generous ransom payments. The American and British hostages, including the journalists James Foley and Stephen J. Sotloff, were murdered. Advertisement. The families of the Americans were outraged by the lack of support from the Obama administration. They said they felt abandoned by their government.
Yet Obama gave up 5
In response,
Taliban leaders
the
for one
administration
deserter.
carried out a review of its policy on hostages. As a result of the review, Obama announced in 2015 that, while the no concessions policy would remain, the U.S. would adopt new protocols to better support families and coordinate responses. The Trump administration hasn't actually changed the official U.S. policy on hostages. In fact, according to Tom Bossert, who served as Homeland Security Advisor during the first year and a half of the Trump administration, it was one of few Obama policies that incoming officials deemed sound. There are not a lot of policies from President Obama that I would accept without change, Bossert told me recently. But the hostage policy is one of them. Although the continuity in official policy is a good thing, it also indicates that Trump's deviation stems from his personal anti-Obama obsession.
They don't like Trump because he was exposing the corruption.
For his part, Obama struggled with hostage
He couldn't
cases
be bought.
partly
He already
because
had
he was
billions
focused on
of
the
dollars.
strategic considerations. He wanted to ensure that foreign governments did not use American prisoners to extract political concessions, and that terrorist groups did not view hostage-taking as a viable means of financing their operations. As a result, Obama was sometimes blind to the humanitarian considerations and the needs of hostage families. By contrast, Trump grasps the political benefits of securing the release of American hostages and seems to give little thought to the broader strategic considerations. Consider the case of Aya Hijazi, a children's rights activist who was imprisoned in Egypt in 2014. Hijazi, a citizen of both the U.S. and Egypt, remained in captivity through the last 18 months of the Obama administration despite concerted efforts to win her freedom. Advertisement. Trump was able to secure Hijazi's release in 2017 by granting Egyptian President Abdel Fattah Sisi a meeting at the White House. I just want to let everyone know, in case there was any doubt, that we are very much behind President Sisi, Trump declared as the two men sat for the cameras. Hijazi was immediately acquitted of the ludicrous child trafficking charges against her and flown out of Egypt on a U.S. military plane. The cost of her freedom, Hijazi learned, was a meeting of her own with Trump at the Oval Office the following morning. At that meeting, Trump gloated that he was able to free Hijazi while Obama was not. Trump's photo op with Hijazi served the interests of Sisi, since it enabled the Egyptian government to portray Hijazi as an American spy. Sisi was also relieved of any U.S. pressure to temper his brutal crackdown in Egypt. Advertisement. As an individual, I'm grateful to be free, Hijazi told me recently. But the larger foreign policy is compromised. It sends a really dark message to the Middle East. Enter the fray, first takes on the news of the minute. Other cases raise similar concerns. For instance, was the American college student Otto Warmbier released from North Korea as part of Trump's agreement to hold a summit with Kim Jong-un? If so, did that deal make it more difficult to hold North Korea accountable for its treatment of Warmbier?
I can see it here,
when he
but
was
I can't
released
see
in
it
September
on my
2017,
screen, the big screen.
Warmbier was in a coma. He died shortly after. Advertisement. And last October, the Turkish government freed the American pastor Andrew Brunson, who had been detained for 24 months. What did Turkey get in exchange? As Brian Jenkins, an expert on counterterrorism and hostage policy at Rand Corporation, recently told me, hostage cases are political dynamite. Governments need maximum flexibility to resolve these situations. Because of the complexity of each case, and because decision-making is often based on classified information, we have to trust our elected leaders to do what's right, balancing strategic interests and humanitarian
I want everybody
concerns.
to have a voice here.
The Trump administration should be commended for its efforts to win the freedom of American hostages. But the president has largely flouted the institutional expertise that informs such decision-making.
Even loony leftists.
The result is a
I would love to have one of
personalization
them
and
come over here
politicization of hostage recovery
call
that
me
is
a
inherently
poopy head
dangerous.
in person, in real time.
Advertisement. Joel Simon is executive director of the Committee to Protect Journalists and author of We Want to Negotiate.
So did you hear anything in there about $6 billion in, attacks on dead Americans? Because I didn't hear dead Americans anywhere in that at all. So remember when the loony left kept telling us that Trump was going to start World War III? Does anybody in the world still think these people have any idea what the fuck they're talking about? Yeah, Trump got us out of war. Biden seems to be getting us into war. He did, he got us out of Afghanistan. We can't help it if the idiot who took charge afterwards fucked up the withdrawal. It is if it gets other Americans killed, you fucking idiot. And I probably shouldn't say that because, I get how, it's her family member, but... Well, there were rules in that treaty that if they broke, which they did, by the way, that troops wouldn't leave. They'd stay. I think they're 2,500. The day those 13 died, they had scopes on the suicide bomber, but were not given the order to shoot. Whoever gave that order is a fucking moron. By the way, later, that money that they received from Iran is going to become relevant again because Palestine is currently begging for donations.
شكرا على كل دعم مادي وسياسي وإعلامي وشعبي قدمتوه لنا هو لن يضيع عند الله ولن يضيع عند أهل فلسطين. وفشلت إسرائيل الصواريخ بل ظلت الصواريخ تنطلق إلى أرض العدو حتى بعد وقف إطلاق النار.
Yeah, it would be great if they hadn't like picked our vice president based on her gender, but must be they assumed her gender because they don't know what a woman is and her skin color.
كيف نتعاون في معركة الإعمار وكسر الحصار وفتح المعابر.
Should have thrown a big thanks to Sniffy Joe, too. That was him thanking Iran for the support. This next video is testimony from an Israeli. Remember all the demonstrations, pro-Hamas demonstrations, who is attending a music festival, trying to figure out how a music festival is a military target. And if it's not a military target, it's called fucking terrorism. I'm still waiting for the loony left who support Hamas to explain to me how kidnapping civilians and raping women is part of warfare. I've been to war. I'm a warrior. They're terrorists. Understand the difference. If you support what Hamas did to civilians, you're a terrorist. Soldiers fight soldiers. Terrorists kill civilians. It's that fucking simple. Of course, cowards will support cowards. For instance, Hamas hides behind women and children. Soldiers leave their women and children at home and go fuck people up. I know some of you sitting there, not you guys, but those people sitting there with their man buns, sipping their lattes, screaming about the horrors of capitalism, don't understand the concept, which is fine if they would just keep their cock holsters shut about shit they know nothing about. You know, like manhood.
Ding, 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 ding. There he sits inside your local coffee shop, sporting a man bun and facial hair. Somehow he believes, although he has no job, that by his 30s he will be a millionaire. M-I-L-L-E-N-N-I-A-L. Gotta love millennials. M-I-L-L-E-N-N-I-A-L. Gotta love millennials. She posts lots of selfies on her Instagram with the quote that's inspirational. Hopes to change the world while wearing yoga pants, armed with her dreams and knowledge of essential oils. M-I-L-L-E-N-N-I-A-L. Gotta love millennials.
Like I said, if you lose a war in 6 days, give it the fuck up.
Gotta love millennials. 27 years old, trying to make it on their own. Maybe stop by leaving your parents home, but maybe we're just wrong. Criticism isn't easy for their ears. They feel like they know most everything. See, they grew up with undeserved confidence, 'cause they got trophies just for participating. M-I-L-L-E-N-N-I-A-L. Gotta love millennials. M-I-L-L-E-N-N-I-A-L. Gotta love millennials. In a couple of years, we will have to pass the torch.
Who do you think taught our anti-terrorism people?
In a couple of years, they will be in charge, and one will be our president. Oh no. M-I-L-L-E-N-N-I-A-L. Gotta love millennials. M-I-L-L-E-N-N-I-A-L. Please pray for millennials.
Well, nowadays, even if you have balls, you're still a woman.
the terrorists were coming from 4 or 5 places, not like one direction. So we didn't know where to go here. So then I got into my car again. I drove a little bit more. I got some people were shooting on me. I left the car. I start to run. I saw a place with many pomelo tree. Many pomelo trees. Like it was there like 200 trees. Okay?
It's a good thing they can't shoot for shit. And I can attest to that personally.
And I was lying in the floor. It was the second hidden that I find. And they were just all around me. And they were going tree by tree and shooting. Everywhere. From 2 sides. And I saw many people people were dying like all around. And then my boyfriend just came with his motorbike through all the things, and he came and picked me in some point. I was the first one to go out of the field. Still, people took them like 2-3 hours to go out, and all the way people were dying, all the way on the road. Young people. It's a festival for young people. Many people were dying in the road.
I don't care if you dress up like a clown and fucking...
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about
leave the kids
breaking
alone.
News and top
It's
stories on
not
the
even that hard.
NBC News app or follow us on social.
I don't normally use Ben Shapiro because he's Jewish and he might be a little biased. However, in this video, he brings up a good point. This is not the first time Joe Biden has supplied arms to a terrorist organization. Not to mention, I guess the loony left has no problem with kids being groomed to be terrorists. I thought that loony leftists were for gun control, obviously not for terrorists, only for Americans. However, listen to what he says about the firearm.
Here's Hamas supporters in the West Bank celebrating. You see the small girl atop her, atop a man's shoulders carrying what looks like an M16 or an Uzi. Those are American M4s, rather. There have been suggestions that those American M4s, where are those coming from? If those are American M4s, there have been suggestions they came, wait for it, from Afghanistan, where Joe Biden surrendered to the Taliban.
U.S. military ACOG. Those of you who don't know, those are telescopic sights issued by the United States military. Loony leftists. Oh my God, you're killing. Israel's killing babies. If you hide behind babies like a coward, if you're using them basically like a sandbag, they're probably going to die in a war. What do you do in war? You kill the enemy. It's not your enemy's job to keep your children safe. It's yours. Stop hiding behind them. I feel for the children because the adults supposedly there to protect them are fucking savages.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us on this Tuesday night. We're in Israel as it prepares for an expected ground invasion of Gaza.
Here's Hamas supporters in the West Bank celebrating.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us on this Tuesday night. We're in Israel as it prepares for an expected ground invasion of Gaza and what is already the bloodiest war in decades. Here in Tel Aviv, we heard air raid sirens throughout the day with constant threats of rocket attacks. On day 4 of this escalating war, Israel is pounding Gaza with hundreds of missile strikes, targeting what the military calls a Hamas terror nest. Reports tonight.
Yeah, but I mean, nobody's loony anymore. They've normalized it. So who are you going to put in there?
Israel with an estimated
they think MAGA people are crazy.
And we have learned some disturbing new details about a massacre that occurred in a small Israeli village near the Gaza border, with the brutal murders of men, women, and children, including babies. At least 14 Americans are among the dead, with at least 20 more Americans unaccounted for. Some are being held hostage by
So
Hamas.
you're telling me we gave $6 billion to Iran, who funded this attack, so we get 30 dead Americans?
We have team coverage tonight.
Way to vote, you fucking tards.
And CBS's Holly Williams is with us just back from the southern border. Good evening, Holly.
Good evening, Nora. Hamas says it won't hold any negotiations over the hostages that it's holding while it's still under fire. And as we now know, some of them are American. We should warn you tonight that our report contains some disturbing images.
Why is it anytime you mention Islam and it's on the news,
softening the
they always have
for
to
a
tell you
ground
it's
invasion. Israel
disturbing
says it's
images.
destroying weapons storage and infrastructure used by Hamas, which is designated a terrorist group by the US. Palestinian officials put the death toll at 900, and the United Nations says there have been more than a dozen hits on health facilities. Israel's military says it's now positioned 35 battalions in the areas surrounding Gaza, from where Hamas...
Yeah, MAGA people don't generally burn shit down or murder
It
people.
caught Israel's
That's
security
usually the
forces
loony
off
left.
guard, but Hamas
If someone
propaganda
resists
videos appear
arrest.
to show the militants training for a similar attack, complete with a model village. The militants fired more barrages of rockets today, hitting the city of Ashkelon in southern Israel. The country's Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, promised his people they would have vengeance.
Hamas will understand that by attacking us, they've made a mistake of historic proportions. We will exact a price that will be remembered by them and Israel's other enemies for decades to come.
But the scale of what the militants inflicted on Israel is still emerging. In some small farming communities, people were murdered wherever the gunmen found them.
Mothers, fathers, babies, young families killed in their bed, in the protection room, in the dining room, or in the garden outside.
Yehuda Gottlieb is a dual US-Israeli citizen who works as a first responder. He was outside Be'eri kibbutz as Israel's security forces battled the militants. Security camera footage shows the gunmen breaking into the compound and shooting its residents. More than 100 people were killed there.
Have you ever seen
Yep,
anything like
cowards.
that before?
Never,
But,
ever,
hey,
ever.
the loony left in the
Drove
United
all
States
the way
and
to
Britain think they're heroes.
And we were careful not to get in bodies.
You had to avoid bodies on the road.
Exactly.
They were littering the road.
Terrible.
And Holly is back with us, and you have reported from Israel for decades. What have these attacks done to the people psychologically?
Nora, I think it's rocked people's sense of security. Some people have told us that they no longer feel safe in their own homes. This is a part of the world that's no stranger to violence, but for many Israelis, this just feels very different. That first responder who you saw just now in our report told us that he believes this is the worst thing that's happened to Jewish people since the Holocaust.
Holly Williams, thank you for your reporting.
Don't worry about it. At least Trump isn't president.
Are you fucking getting it yet?
Don't worry about it. At least Trump isn't president.
Are you fucking getting it?
Well, throughout the day here, the Israeli military has been recovering the bodies of whole families, including several children cut down in a rural community just a mile from the border with Gaza. Israeli soldiers on the scene describe it as a massacre. Our international editor, Jeremy Bowen, has been to the village of Kfar Azar, where the bodies today have been recovered.
The first few days of war at this small Israeli community called Kfar Aza are a microcosm of Israel's trauma and a glimpse of what might come next. Israeli troops only seized back full control of the kibbutz this morning. It's one of a series of small Israeli villages along the Gaza wire. When we arrived, they were still firing on houses across on the Gaza side. Israeli soldiers started their assault here at around 6 o'clock on Saturday evening, 12 hours or so after Hamas attacked. And during that day, Hamas carried out a massacre. Kfar Azar was taken by surprise, like everywhere else Hamas attacked. The kibbutz guard, armed civilian volunteers, died fighting back. Dead Hamas gunmen are decomposing where they were killed. The evidence is that they stormed through the kibbutz, killing families, including babies. Only this morning could Israeli troops finish recovering all the civilians Hamas killed.
They have just jihad machines.
The loony left would love that. They were killing babies.
Without nothing.
Like
Just
Planned Parenthood.
Normal citizens that want to take their breakfast, and that's all. And they kill them, and they cut some of their heads. It's aggressive.
The grumpy farmer's out in the
difficult to
fields
kill it.
right now, so
But we
he
must
told me
remember
ahead of time
who is the enemy
he might not be
and what
able
our
to
mission.
come on.
Our mission is the justice. We're in the right side, and all the world needs to be behind us.
The woman under this cover, another officer said, was decapitated. He said they killed her in her front garden. Even for experienced soldiers, fighting their way back in against a determined enemy was hard going. How difficult was the fighting?
I cannot imagine.
Have you ever had to do anything like this before as a soldier?
No, not like this.
What happens next? What do you do next? What does Israel do next?
I don't know.
Why does he look like he's at a bar trying to pick up like a girl?
Will tell me to do. I will do. I hope that we will go inside.
Into Gaza?
Yeah.
That's going to be tough fighting.
Yeah, we're ready for it.
The bodies of the dead Israeli civilians will have to be identified. Their murder was, without doubt, a war crime. But what about the Palestinian civilians Israel is killing in attacks on Hamas? As you know, all armies have obligations under the laws of war to protect civilian life, even in war zones. Are you doing this with this level of airstrikes that are going on at the moment, and any ground operation that might happen?
I'm sure.
Oh my God, what about the civilians in
value,
Gaza? Well,
our
the enemy's
culture,
hiding
all our
behind the
life.
civilians in Gaza.
And
So if you hide behind civilians, your job is to protect the civilians. Get them out of harm's way. They're not. They want them to be killed so they can put it on the news.
And our value. We are
Also,
Israeli,
they
we are
support them.
Jewish,
So
and you know,
if you
it's a
support
very
terrorism, you're a
difficult
fucking terrorist.
theater,
Period.
A lot of problem. People that stay in the battlefield are suffer a lot. You can see what happening here. But we come to kill an enemy, not a civilian.
Yeah, unfortunately, there's no shield if you're.
But in only a
don't have
few
a problem
days,
shooting.
Israel has inflicted immense
Knowing that,
damage
I don't have
in
a problem
Gaza.
shooting.
They've cut off supplies
If I
of
didn't
food,
know that,
water,
then
and
I'd have,
power,
I'd
and
be
killed
like, shit,
hundreds of civilians.
afterwards. But
Palestinian suffering, Israel says, is the responsibility of Hamas. Israel's already been accused of breaking the laws of war, and that will get louder as more Palestinian civilians are wounded and killed. At Kfar Aza, Israeli troops
I have no
were
respect
thinking
for
of
these
what's
animals.
next.
They
Perhaps a ground
dealt with
invasion
them
of
firsthand. Not
It was
tough
tough enough for the
Hamas, but the
Israelis
same
to come
fucking
in to
mentality.
recapture
They would
this
send their
area,
kids
these
out with
small
these
border
donkey
communities.
carts.
It
They
is a
have
different
straw on
order
top,
of
you know,
military
because
challenge
under
to
the
cross
straw
the
they would
wire
put a couple
to get to
155
Gaza,
artillery
potentially
shells.
to fight
And then have
house
the
to
kids
house at a time
walk by our
when Hamas
Humvees
will
and
have
set them
made its
off.
plans.
So they were
and
killing
will be
their own fucking kids to get at us. Instead of coming
Some of
out
these
and
men are
facing,
moving
these
north
are
in
adults,
case
by the
war
way.
starts with
Instead of
Hezbollah,
coming out and
powerful
facing me
Lebanese
face to
militia
face,
backed by
send your
Iran.
kid out there, you coward
What
piece
happened
of shit.
here
I have no
is
fucking
why
respect.
Israel is shaken to its core, why it insists it must break Hamas, and it points to the danger and uncertainty ahead. Jeremy Bone, BBC News, Kfar Aza.
I have no respect for these fucking people, and I hope they fucking eradicate them. Not a loss to the world. Really isn't. They give nothing to the world.
Joining us now, NBC News White House correspondent Ali Rafa and MSNBC chief correspondent and host Ali Velshi in Amman, Jordan. Ali Rafa, I want to begin with you. What have you learned about the Americans who've been killed?
Yeah, Alicia, in just the last hour, we heard from, as you mentioned, the National Security Council, a spokesperson telling us that several U.S. citizens were among those killed in these attacks that began in the wee hours of the morning yesterday.
Personally, it's probably a good thing I'm not in the States, because if I hear one leftist tell me after all this, what about Trump, I'd kick him in the fucking balls.
Affected and wish those injured
that they're not sure they have.
We continue to monitor the situation closely and remain in touch with our Israeli partners, particularly the local authorities. They add the State Department is ready to provide consular assistance to U.S. citizens in Israel and has issued updated travel advisories for U.S. citizens in response to Hamas's terrorist attacks. And this comes after we heard Secretary of State Antony Blinken tell our colleague Kristen Welker this morning on Meet the Press that U.S. officials were working overtime to try to confirm those reports that Americans were among those killed and also among those who had been taken hostage by Hamas militants since this attack began. And Alicia, it's been pretty quiet here at the White House today because we know from some White House officials that the communication and coordination that had begun yesterday is continuing and has been continuing today. We know the national security team for the president, White House officials have all been.
But Trump isn't president.
Communication. Counterparts as these next steps are sorted out. They're trying to get as much intelligence as they can about the current status of what's going on in Israel, how this was even able to happen, how these Hamas militants were able to penetrate what was a sophisticated defense system and intelligence system that Israel
When it comes to Israel, you really don't have to. You just have to stay the fuck out the way. Every time they've signed a treaty with the Palestinians, it's because America and others, oh my God, they're Palestinians, the civilians.
And will continue to provide that.
Fuck off.
We did
level the fucking
that
place.
The U.S. military is shifting some of the U.S. assets. We know that, according to Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin, a military aircraft carrier has already begun its journey, making it closer to Israel as a show of support. Secretary Austin saying in a statement, in part, quote, that the United States is, quote, rapidly providing the Israel Defense Forces with additional equipment and resources, including munitions. The first security assistance will begin moving today and arriving in the coming days. So you have that military aspect as far as whether we could see any humanitarian support in the future. Those are still questions that we have for this White House and administration moving forward, Alicia.
We have live images of Gaza and of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu ordering what he calls a complete siege in Gaza after declaring war on Hamas. This is after the Palestinian militant group Hamas launched a surprise attack over the weekend.
They're actually elected officials in their government, so he just declared war on their government, so it's legal.
Many Israeli American and Palestinian Americans raising their voices over the conflict that has killed hundreds and wounded thousands in the Middle East. So joining me now is U.S. Democratic strategist Rania Batrice, who is also a first-generation Palestinian American. Rania, thank you so much for joining us. And first of all, you were supposed to be in that region today. So how are you and your family members?
So far, everybody is safe, thankfully. But again, that's just so far, obviously, minute by minute. Every time
this chick is a
one of those
fucking
WhatsApp
idiot.
messages doesn't go through, there's a lot of concern because, like I was saying, every moment things are changing.
That's a terrifying way to proceed. So have you been able to contact your family, though, and speak with them at all, even if it's through WhatsApp?
Some of them, yes. Colleagues, some of my friends and colleagues over there, it's been a little bit harder to reach. And obviously with Israel shutting power off in Gaza, it makes it even more difficult. So
let me get this. So let me get this straight. You shot at the very people.
And over the weekend, a Democrat Minnesota Representative Ilhan
You shot at
Omar
the very
called on
people
the international
who supply your
community to
electricity and then
provide
complain
protections
because they
for
shut off the
Palestinians.
electricity.
So what do you think those protections?
Well, first and foremost, the fact that a government can shut off electricity, stop water from being delivered, stop supplies and food from being delivered, basically with the touch of a button, just is a direct reflection of the occupation, oppression, and apartheid that's been taking place for decades in the country. So I think that's what she's referring to, at least in part. And, you know, the people that are literally caught in the crossfires are civilians who were already suffering, who were already oppressed, whose homes in a lot of situations have been demolished and were not allowed to be rebuilt. So already an exacerbated situation that's going to be even worse with this regime in Israel basically saying they're going to starve folks out.
She's lying about aid to the Palestinians. She's, of course, yes, terrorist lie. Wow. Shocker. Terrorist fucking lie.
The European Union, driven by a desire to help implement the two-state solution and to also address serious socio-economic needs in Palestinian society, the European Union regularly directs aid to several channels, including the institutions of the PA, the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestine Refugees in the Near East, UNRWA, healthcare and social welfare organizations, and other groups working on humanitarian, educational, and other social issues. Following a partial suspension of funds in 2020, which was intended to force changes in Palestinian educational curricula, the EU released the roughly €215 million in aid that it had been withholding. And on average, the EU provides more than €600 million a year in aid to the Palestinians. The United States, American aid to the Palestinians has been influenced over the years by the vicissitudes of U.S.-Israeli relations, as well as by the central role Washington has played in steering what little remains of a peace process between Israel
Farmer.
and Palestine.
That's generally only for
Nonetheless,
terrorists.
The U.S. is the second largest source of aid to the Palestinians. Following a drastic reduction of American aid during the Trump administration, which then President Donald Trump attempted to use as leverage to force the Palestinians to accept his so-called deal of the century peace plan, the Biden
we totally
administration
agree.
resumed funding in 2021 to the tune of almost $250 million.
That's why it's kind of hard to feel sympathy.
Importantly, this tranche of aid included $150 million for UNRWA, which provides for millions of Palestinian refugees living both under Israeli control
but if
and
you
in
kind of
neighboring
ask
Arab
for
countries.
You're kind of like,
during his recent trip to Palestine,
really,
President Joe Biden
look in
announced
the
an
dictionary
additional
between
aid
shit and
package of
syphilis, you'll find sympathy.
$316 million, $201 million of which was allocated to UNRWA. A multi-year contribution of $100 million for East Jerusalem hospitals was also included in the package.
We already have.
Although administration officials have
don't know how
emphasized
many.
the need to ameliorate the dire economic conditions in Palestine,
Actually, we've
steps
already
to deal
taken
with
in
the
some
issue must
Hamas
also include
members as
attention
well.
to Palestinians' political and national rights. Individual countries, Germany, Norway, the United Kingdom, France, and Japan are among the countries that have been most committed to helping the Palestinians. Their combined contributions amounted to more than 20% of all aid between 1994 and 2020. Their chief concern has been to assist the PA, given that it is the only internationally recognized Palestinian political entity responsible for administering the occupied Palestinian territories. The World Bank, as the international financial institution responsible for aiding economic development, the World Bank has provided the Palestinians with both assistance and expertise. Its contributions to the Palestinian economy during the period in question totaled $1.3 billion, or 3.2% of the total. The World Bank also exerts significant influence on the aid process, helping set the donor aid agenda and assisting with the management of donated funds.
They've caught like 200. How many haven't they caught?
A look at the aid distribution map shows that 5 Arab countries provided the bulk of Arab aid to the Palestinians between 1994 and 2020, totaling some $8.5 billion. All of these countries are oil and gas rich, which not only gives them a central role in ensuring Palestinian well-being, but also enhances their potential to impact the Palestinian cause. The top donor during this period was Saudi Arabia at $4 billion, followed by the UAE, $2.1 billion, Algeria, $908 million, Qatar, $766 million, and Kuwait, $758 million. But in 2020, Arab assistance dropped dramatically, ostensibly because of economic considerations due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Saudi aid, for example, dropped by just over 77% compared to the previous year, while Algerian aid dried up completely. However, some attributed the decline, at least in Saudi aid, to political considerations connected with the Trump administration's efforts to force the PA to accept its peace plan. But regardless of social or political considerations, the Arab world's provision for the well-being of the Palestinians has long been essential, linked as it is with Arab states' declared solidarity with the Palestinian cause and their insistence on the importance of addressing Palestinians' political and national rights.
Perhaps they shouldn't spend so much money on ammunition.
We don't care about civilians, and it's playing out right in front of our eyes right now.
No, Hamas doesn't care about civilians.
Palestinian
They put
Americans
civilians in
viewing
front of you,
this
in front of
attack
them.
on Israel by Hamas?
I think the
Hence the
frustrating
term
thing,
Democrat
for me is,
strategist.
and for many of us, quite frankly, is
Put Democrat in
two things
front
can
of
be true at
anything, it
once.
sounds stupid.
We can condemn Hamas and hate their actions and understand that they do not represent us and our people, and also acknowledge and condemn this extreme
They have not built a single
government.
school
This
or
is
hospital
arguably the
in
most
10
extreme
years.
government we've ever
But
seen,
they have thousands
from
of
the state
fucking
Israel,
rockets.
the most homophobic, the most xenophobic, the most misogynistic. So two things can be true at once. And I
Are you
think that
fucking
is in
getting
large
it
part
yet?
the way my community feels is suffering. Humanity seems to be lost, and folks are digging in their heels on all sides. And the fact of the matter is it's the people who are suffering while the powers that be continue to do everything they can to just hold on to that power while hurting civilians.
Mm-hmm. In your opinion, what makes diplomacy so difficult? I mean, what could help ease this conflict, in your opinion?
Diplomacy
the
is
fact
difficult
that
because you're fucking
Israel's
terrorists.
the only country in the world that receives
Terrorists don't believe
nearly
in
$4
diplomacy.
billion from our
Terrorists believe in
government with
terror.
zero,
I have a degree in
conditions,
counterterrorism.
zero checks or
It's about
balances, and now
theatrics.
you have
It's about
the president saying that he's going to continue
the more
sending money.
violent and the more
There's no
sick,
motivation
the
to
better.
actually sit down and negotiate in good faith. There hasn't
It's
been for decades,
theater.
and for the record, it's not just this administration in the United States that's failed so miserably. It's every administration for the last 75 years that's all but ensured this conflict continues and escalates.
All right, Rania, Patrice, thank you so much for sharing your perspective and your time with us. We truly appreciate it.
Okay, I forgot to turn the mic on. So I'll do this again. This showed up on my Facebook feed. Yeah, you already got the So I typed back, well, Iran sent you millions and you spent them on rockets, so suck it up. So, that brings us to the end of this episode. Thanks to H. Farmer, Pooh Guru, Jeremy. Maybe next week Grumpy can show up, or maybe I'll call him. If I can get him to get Skype, I'll call him and he can be on the show. Or any one of you. Any of you guys want to be on the show, let me know. You just need to get Skype. That's all. I hope this brought some pertinent information that was beneficial to you. As always, thanks for listening to the Super Gringo podcast. This podcast was created by Sean Armstrong. You hate Trump, Biden shot. It was produced and recorded by Sean Armstrong. Researched by Sean Armstrong. And edited by Sean Armstrong. Biology is just too much. The Super Gringo podcast is a product of Gelada Studios. Gelada is slang for cold ass beer. Call me names and swear at me because you changed the way you be, and I don't want to live your fantasy. I know I'm right. You're fucking crazy. And tonight I'm gonna prove just how much you ain't too bright. You're kinda lazy. I know you're wrong. I know I'm right. You're fucking nuts.